So
Yes.
we just mess around a bit. So
That's good.
I think give us an Arnie impression quickly.
I'll be back.
Go for it.
Hasta la vista,
You
baby.
go the same.
That's a good one.
I'll be back.
I'll be back, yes. If you want to live, come with me.
You want to leave? Get to the chopper!
Absolutely. Get into the chopper now.
Oh, flip it. Okay, so I'm Dwayne Hearn. I'm here with Ruby Wolf, Matthew Hearn, little big brother, as I like to call him. And we're here with Daniel Craig Johnson from DCJ Art Studio. We're coming to you live from Impelo, which is a co-working space in Greenside, where Dan has his studio and works with numerous other people in this area on his own mission, but loves the collaboration space. So he's agreed to chat to us. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about life, love, changing passions, definitely a bit of discipline, and getting to know Dan's story.
Chasing people in townships, maybe?
Yeah,
Chasing
100%, yes. Oh my goodness. Don't remind me of those days.
Yeah, you see, so I think Ruby's gonna pull the carpet under from Dan in a little bit, but I'm sure you'll be able to handle it. So let's get cracking. Dan, you obviously, people will tell straight away from your accent, you're not really from here.
No, I'm not actually. I'm German. Or let's say, if you want to put it 100% straight, I am half American, half German. So my dad was a US soldier, black man, and my mom is a German. She is white. And yeah, it was a typical collaboration of German woman and American soldier. GI child, that's what they used to call us back in the days.
Yes. Okay, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I said we agreed we wouldn't ask you too many statistics, but I saw on your Facebook page, and well, let me actually start by saying this. In my eyes, you are a true inspirational South African story.
Thank you, Dwayne.
You know, and sometimes you find more gold in this country, which we'll get onto, than some South Africans do. How did you find cricket? You're a German monster of a man. How did you find cricket?
Yeah, it was a very funny story because when I came to South Africa, I actually always said, how can guys wear white clothes and hit the ball with sticks? That's so stupid, actually, you know. And I was always raving about going on and ranting about cricket. And what happened is I used to work for a German logistics company in South Africa where I used to be the risk manager. And they had an action cricket team. So they needed players. And I said, you know what, I fill in just to help out, and played action cricket. And it became a game and another game and another game. Yeah, and eventually when I left to endeavor on my career as a photographer, then I actually was missing to hit the ball with a stick. And I asked around and I found LMS, which is a T20, it's 20 overs with 8 people. And I found a team and I started playing, and yeah, it's now, I would say, almost 3 years down the line, and I got like almost 60 games on my back. Yeah, so that's how I ended up in cricket.
How often do you play?
I actually play night league on Wednesdays. I play on Saturdays sometimes and on Sundays. So sometimes I can play up to 3 to 4 games a week.
That's right.
So, how old were you then when you started playing cricket?
I was 41 when I started playing cricket, yes.
Never too late to start.
Never too late to start,
I
absolutely.
played a bit of action cricket with them.
Yes, you did.
We were in the same team.
And I really couldn't hit a ball for, you know, to save my life. And I was like bowling, you know, with these arms, like the ball was going everywhere on that cricket court. But yeah, I improved quickly, and now I'm one of the strongest bowlers in our team.
Really?
And action cricket is also indoors, eh?
Yes, indoors, yes.
Indoor pitches.
So obviously finding your way into cricket, the bigger question is, how did you find your, we're definitely going to get into a more in-depth story, but how did you find your way to South Africa and end up staying here?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
many
a good
people,
question.
you come from a first world country where, I'll say it bluntly, so many South Africans want to escape to.
Yes.
But you choose to come from this first world amazing country and stay in South Africa with all of its faults. How and why?
And how long ago did you?
Yeah, it's a good
South
question.
West.
Well, I'm here since almost 8 years now. So what happened is I used to work for a huge high-profile security company in Germany. And then you know about my story with my autoimmune disease. I got sick. I spent in total about 26 months in hospital. And after I recovered and I was back to like an operating normal self, I decided that, you know, being so long away from an executive position was just a bit too long, and I didn't want to take the place away from people that filled in for me and worked hard and passionately to keep the company going. So I say to my old MD, look, I think I'm going to look around, and I think there's a bit more out there for me. I've been with the company for so long, and I think I just need maybe also another challenge. And back in the days, I had some offers for security contracting, and I had an offer for Gaborone to train soldiers and policemen for the Soccer World Cup. And there was a couple of offers in the air, and I spoke to my old MD. I told him I wasn't quite sure about the offers that I had, about the packages and the negotiations and the terms and conditions. Yeah, and then he said to me, he met a businessman in Munich, in the Bayerischer Hof is what we call it. It was the owner of a German logistics company here in Johannesburg, and he was looking for a risk manager to handle their risk portfolio. And the main point was that he didn't want that classical risk manager that you find in South Africa that was with the police service and comes and breaking knees and breaking backs. He wanted someone that can somehow, you know, also with a bit of a school studying background, that can implement systems and procedures and everything. And that's not to diss anyone that is in risk management in South Africa, but it was just a kind of a different profile that they were looking for. And they were battling to find that profile in South Africa. So I came to Johannesburg and I had a week, talked here. Then I was invited to do a project for 5 weeks where I had to turn statistics, theft statistics and stuff like that around. And I had 5 weeks time for that, and everything worked out well. And then I was asked if I want to come. And yeah, in that time I decided that that's maybe the challenge that I was looking for. And I ended up deciding to come. I was here for the project in February and in April again. And then in June 2010, I moved over to South Africa permanently. And ever since, I'm here.
And knowing all the stats on South Africa, I mean, you would see firsthand, like you say, all the stats on crime,
yes,
statistics and all the stuff. Didn't faze you at all?
No, you know what? I think if you come from a first world country to a third world country, I mean, first of all, you have to change your expectation. You have to change your view. I mean, it's your choice. I could have decided to go to the States. I have an American passport. I could have decided to go to anywhere in Europe. And I think it's a conscious choice, but I think because of my military background, because of my security background, I think Johannesburg was tempting because it was not like in Germany. In Germany, you train as a risk manager, you hear about shootouts, you go onto the shooting range, you talk about hunting criminals, but in fact, the opportunity to really do that or practice it in Germany is very little because we got little crime in Germany. Yes. So for me, it just sounded like this is now the time where after military and all my action, I will have another chance to really prove that what I've learned in theory and obviously practiced in my military time, that I can apply that to another kind of environment. And that was the challenge that I was facing in Johannesburg with hijackings and with, you know, with hunting criminals and recovering stolen cargo from our warehouses in the deepest corners of townships in Johannesburg. That was, I think, the challenge that I needed, and I accepted that challenge, and that brought me here. And I must say, apart from all those things, for me, even after 8 years, I have to say that Johannesburg is, for me, a beautiful city. I would not move to Cape Town or to Durban or wherever you want to bring me. I love Johannesburg because of its metropolitan vibe, because of the energy and the hype that is going on in Johannesburg. And I think it's just a city like no other city in the world, you know. And you have good places, great places all over the world, but I just love Johannesburg.
Yeah, I think I've heard you say before that obviously many guys, they talk about places overseas, but you can't really do things overseas that you can do here. Or call it get away with.
Yes.
Call it get away with.
I feel like you pretty much have no limitations there, really.
The grass is greener always on the other side, you know, that's what they say. And I think it's really true, especially when you look at photography, for instance. When I did the intro that I filmed last weekend in town, when I started with the idea for it, I actually was thinking, yeah, but where are you going to do that, you know? Because I was inspired by a vlogger, a YouTuber, a very well-known one. And he did this intro in, I think it was in Vancouver. So, you know, you got the skyscrapers, you got this beautiful kind of cityscapes and everything. And I was looking at it and I was thinking, how are you going to pull that off in Johannesburg? And then when we arrived at Joburg Neighborhoods Market on Sunday, where we did the second part of the intro, town was empty, you know, there was taxi drivers and everything. But I looked around and I said, why are you here? And I said, exactly because you look at Johannesburg and it looks like the Manhattan skyline, but when you drive through it, windows broke, burned, it actually looks like, you know what I mean, you know, this kind of vibe. You bring a tourist, he drives on the highway, he sees the cityscape, and you actually think, oh my goodness, this is like Manhattan, I love it. And then you drive through Johannesburg and all of a sudden you go like, ooh,
yeah,
okay, that's what it is, you know, what's going on here. And I think when I saw that on Sunday, I looked at it again with different eyes, and I said to myself, the guy that is sitting in Vancouver, that is looking at his skyscrapers all the time, his clean town, he might be thinking, oh my goodness, why do I always have to film here? I wish, when he looks at my intro, I wish I could be at a place like that, urban and graffitis everywhere. So he might find my place just as cool as I find his place, because he's on the other side. Yeah, and that is what we as South Africans, or people that live in South Africa, always forget, that you know, other people look at what you have and they might envy you for it. I think it's very important that you appreciate what you have. And when you start seeing what is happening around you and what you actually have, and you start appreciating that, then the whole vision or the view and the vantage point changes completely.
Like, people have a choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
They have a choice on how they look at it. And some people can just look at it blindly and go, I don't want to see that. And then they continue with their whole life in fear.
Yes.
Whereas you've got this attitude of just opening it up.
Yes.
Which is so different to what you hear on the streets every day.
Yes. I also think that it's, you know, your path is somehow predetermined. I mean, I firmly believe in that. And trust me, I mean, I'm open to any kind of belief system as long as it gives you the freedom to be who you are and to choose how much you want from it. So whether it's Christianity or Buddhism or whatever, that doesn't matter. But I do believe that your path is somehow predestined. Yes, there is some, you know, some pathways where you have to decide if you're going to go left and right. But I think at the end of the day, it all comes back together and you are leading or heading towards one direction. And that is obviously when we one day die. And I think you cannot live in fear. And when you stop living in fear, it doesn't matter where you are, because I can live in Johannesburg. I lived here for 8 years. I've never been broken into. There was attempts into some of my houses, and obviously that's not nice, but you know what, you live in Germany, you grow up, you are 35 years, never anything happened to you, and you just get into that random shooting that happens every 5 to 10 years in Germany, and you're there at the wrong place at the wrong time and you die, you know, so why live in fear? You have to just be free and do what you need to do. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's nice points. So let's take it a step back in history and discuss kind of how you got to these points now. Like we spoke previously and you said you've changed career 3 times. We know you obviously in risk management and before in the military.
Yes.
Maybe give us some background into what it was like growing up in Germany. How did you make the decision to go to military? Like, I remember from my father's side, he was forced. He had to go to the military, he had to go to war. I didn't have to make that choice, and I didn't. You know, I went to London on a gap year to try find myself away from my folks. What was that decision for you? Why did you make that decision?
You see, and it's funny that you say that, because we come back to the point of perception, how you perceive things, you know, and how people see things differently. For me, military was an opportunity. It was the only choice that I had when I was a young boy. And the reason for that is going back to my childhood. We were 5 kids. We grew up in a very, I would say, unstable home. We had like I would say a horrible upbringing, and we had our challenges. And for us, there was no childhood, there was just survival every day. And yes, we had patches or times in our childhood, like a year or 1.5 or 2, where everything went well, but there was always that not knowing what is going to happen tomorrow. Where are we going to live tomorrow? You know, we moved around quite a lot, got drawn from school, went into a new school, you had to find your way. But where we grew up was a very little town, and I mean, we were almost, I think there was maybe 2 or 3 other colored families. So we lived in a very traditional German town, and about 3 kilometers away from the town, there was like a street that went up onto the hill, and up there was like housing areas for the American soldiers, because we were in the south of Germany, and the south of Germany was predominantly controlled by the US forces after the Second World War, and that was for many years like that. So we made our way up there to find our kind, because we were colored kids, and up there was black kids, GI kids, soldiers, so they were like us, you know.
And you weren't so, was it because that you wanted to find people that were like you, or you weren't feeling that accepted where you were?
Yes, it was quite critical in our times where we grew up to be, you know, like 4, like my sister died, so that's why we were 4 left, and to be 4 colored kids in a community which is completely German and very far behind with the thought process. I mean, the Second World War was still in their head. You know, we were still in times where you know, where it was about the white Aryan race, and we had our issues as colored kids in school, you know. And I think the biggest thing was expectation. No one expected anything for us. They all knew we are half black. We were born in non-married relationships, so we were anyway doomed, you know. We're never going to go anywhere, and we're never going to make it to anywhere. And I must say, because of the circumstances, for long years in our youth and childhood, there was no chance for us. You know, there was no real chance because we were always on the edge. You were never really accepted and integrated, and I think that was a big problem for my siblings. Less for me because I just escaped into a different world. You know, I spent my time in the forest. I was there already, sleeping overnight in the forest. Mom looking for me. I was making tents. I was making weapons.
So you're planning your escape for
100%.
For years.
Actually, like that, you know. And I think I always was kind of a free. I wouldn't call it free spirit, but I was an adventurer and a conqueror. You know, I always saw beasts and animals that I had to slay in the forest everywhere. You know, and it was all my fantasy world. It was all happening in my head, and I think it happened there because it was for me the escape out of reality, because things were not always going so well for our family. You know, we had no money, very long stretches. We had nothing to eat. We lived in houses where we had holes in the walls, and my mom had to take bricks and put them into the oven, heat them up, and then wrap them in towels and put them into the bed because it was in winter in Germany. And we had no heating because we didn't have electricity because you couldn't pay the bills. We had no water because the bill was not paid. There was no food, so you had to kind of survive, you know.
It's so crazy hearing this, because this sounds like South African problems.
Absolutely,
you know what I mean?
In a first world country, yes, I agree
countries,
100%.
yeah.
And you know, and because of those circumstances, I grew up. My youth wasn't easy because, you know, you were always that one kid that didn't have money, you know, and you started making up stories, you know. When you went out with the friends, it was like, hey, I lost my wallet, or I forgot my wallet, because you didn't have money, but you still wanted to come.
You still wanted to get out.
Yeah, you wanted to get out, you know. And I think the friends that I had in my youth, they all knew it. And obviously it wasn't always appreciated, but I think they knew it, and they knew kind of the circumstances. And they always made a plan to cover that cover charge for me and to pay the 2 drinks in the club that I needed, you know, because I just wanted to go out and dance and have fun and get away from that world that I was growing up in, you know. And, you know, fast forward, when I was younger, I went to a security company and I said, I need work, you know, I got nothing, I need work. And I was very young, and I started in that security company. And what it was actually a company that did security, but they also had like a part of the company where they did like construction sites. They did soccer matches in all the stadiums in Germany. They did holiday on ice, so they would build the ice court and everything. And then some of us would operate the spots in the show, and we would travel with holiday on ice all over the world. And that company took me in when I was very young. I think I was 16 at that time. And you know, and they gave me money, and I was looking. You can't even imagine what I looked like back in the days. I mean, I had like long hair like Jimi Hendrix. My whole appearance was completely fucked up. Sorry that I have to say it like that, but that was.
Yeah.
Well, I think if I showed my girlfriend a picture of what I looked back in the days, she would still break up with me now.
You obviously didn't have these back then.
Absolutely, yeah.
But you had the heart.
I was more athletic, and funny enough, with 16, I was actually quite short,
okay,
you know, and quite skinny. And then all of a sudden, I made that burst, and I started training, and I grew very fast, and then I became what I was. But you know, to get back into the story, I worked in that company, and you know, it was most of the time going to a soccer match where I would stand outside and tear tickets, and you would go there and you would get like 50 mark, which was the currency before the euro in Germany. And the point was that you would get onto the bus, you would stop at the first petrol station, and you would want a Coke and you would want some sweets, because you don't have that at home. You never had that as a child. So that's the things that you desire. You just want the things that you couldn't have when you were younger, you know. So now you had some money in your pocket. So you stopped at the petrol station, you got yourself a Coke and a couple of sweets. You kept a bit of money because you knew after about half of the soccer match, you would be hungry. So you would go to one of the tuck shops and you would buy a Bratwurst or a Bockwurst, something German, you know, and you would eat that. And after 16, 17 hours, when you would come home from Stuttgart back to Nuremberg with the bus where we all drove in, you would arrive, and if you were lucky, you would have maybe 3 or 4 mark left. So you would come back and you would have no money. And that inevitably led up to a point where I recognized that, yes, I'm making money now and I'm somehow belonging somewhere to a community and I got a bit of a platform to stand on, but you're not making money. You're not doing what other people are doing. You're not developing. You're not getting a driver license. You don't have money to buy a car. You don't have money to do all the other things that people in my age were doing back in the days. And then came that one day where I had that epiphany, and I said to myself, you know what? I need to do something because this is not going to work. And there would be a lot of stories that I could go into from there that led me up to that decision. But it was one night where I was standing at a river, and I had to get to a place where I worked. I also worked there to make more money, and I actually put together vegetables onto boxes and made them ready for delivery, like dispatching vegetables for the supermarkets. And that night, I already had a warning. I had to come on time because I was always late. I had no car, I had nothing. There was no transport from the town where I lived. Yeah. So I walked. And that night, I was walking into a street, and I could see the warehouse. And I knew, hey, I'm going to make it. You know, it's still time enough because I could see it in the distance. And just shortly before I hit that warehouse, there is that big river. It's like a channel, an artificial river between the warehouse and me. And I forgot that that thing is running right through there. And I was standing there, and I knew that I had to walk 2.5 kilometers back to get out of that area, to walk around and to get to work. And I knew that was it, you know, stuffed. So yeah, I obviously got told to leave because it was, again, I didn't make it in time. And that night when I was standing at that river, I think that was one of maybe 2 times where I really thought about, you know, just walk in. Just walk in and, you know, things will be easier. And just go in there and let it be, and all that shit will be over. I was standing there for, I think, a half an hour, and I was thinking that. And you have to just finish this now. This is all rubbish. Yeah, and then I was standing there and thinking, and eventually I turned around and I walked to work. I obviously didn't do it, because otherwise I wouldn't be here. Yeah. But I walked to work and I had a chat, left a week after, and I recognized that there is just no way. This is just not going anywhere, you know, and you have to do something. So I said, you know what? I'm going to become a parabat. So I went to the recruitment office in Nuremberg, walked straight in, said, I want to talk to someone. I want to become a soldier. I want to volunteer. And I said to him, I want to be a parabat. That's what I want to be, because I knew it from the army movies and everything. And a couple of weeks later, I got a letter, and they wanted to send me to like a construction unit somewhere close to Munich. And I went back into the office to that guy, and I said to him, Guy, I want to be a parabat. Why are you sending me a letter to go to this construction unit? You know, look at me. I'm a man. I want to fight. I want to be strong. I want to go to the parabats. And he said to me, that's not possible. And I said to him, watch me. It will be possible, because if you don't send me to the parabats, I'm just going to play crazy or something like that. I'm just going to lose my crap, and I'm going to do whatever I want, and then you're going to have to discharge me or whatever. Don't do that. Just give me what I want. I want to be a parabat.
Elaborate for us what a parabat is. Yeah,
it's like the German infantry, but it's obviously parachuting. Yes. You know, it's airborne rangers. Yeah, so that's the kind of unit that it was. And funny enough, and I don't know why, maybe it was just something that the universe did for me. But like a week before I was supposed to go to that construction unit, I received another letter, and I was called to a parabat unit.
That's crazy.
So I went there. And
this river stopped the journey that you were on and sent you
me straight to military, you know. And long story short, the really important message out of what I have to say is just that I came to a point where I saw that my toiling was for nothing, and I'm not going to get anywhere. And I've decided to consciously make a decision, and knowingly, because I knew that in German military you can do your driver license, you can do degrees if you want to, you can do training, you can do all those things that you didn't have. Because I mean, I dropped out of school, I think grade 7 or something like that, because I just liked other things more than school. And I mean, I had nothing, considering Germany, where you go to school, you finish your school with your matric or degree or whatever it is, you do your apprenticeship afterwards, or you study, go to university. I had nothing of all of that. And I knew I'm never going to get that again if I don't make a choice. And I knew if I go to military, there will be a platform where if I do what I need to do, I will get another opportunity in life. Although it's later and I'm supposed to do it before, but I will get another opportunity in life to achieve all those things.
I like this, because obviously I know a little bit of your background, and this is obviously your first lesson, your first major lesson like that of your change of decision on where you're going, and it was because you were physically stuck and you couldn't go further at that point, and your life would be stuck.
100%.
And I know that some of your other lessons later are along the similar lines but different.
Yes.
So that's really good. And they say obviously you get taught you get taught lessons till you make the decisions to
100%.
overcome them.
Teach you over and over and over until
Yes.
you change the wheel.
Yes. And you know what? I think the important thing is also to understand that I was always a hard worker from young ages. You know, if you gave me work, I would work hard. I would work 16 hours, 20 hours. I didn't need sleep. I didn't need food. I just wanted to be a part of a community, and I wanted to work. I wanted to have all the things that I didn't have when I was a child. You know, I wanted a bicycle. I wanted a bike. I wanted fancy tools. You know, I wanted all the stuff that I couldn't have when I was a child. And but obviously there was a couple of wrong decisions as well that I made. You know, connecting to the wrong people, stopping school. You know, not doing the right things in school, because till I was 16, 17, 18, let's say, I didn't do the things that you have to do. You know, that are important for you, like schooling and education and everything. And I think that all those things now, having to experience that, working in a warehouse, putting vegetables together for dispatch, you know, I mean, that was conceived in Germany as a low-level job, you know. That's what you do when you really have no other choice anymore, you know. And I think all those lessons eventually brought me to that one breaking point at that river, where I recognized that if I stay on that route, I'm going to relive the same life that some of my family lived, you know. I knew I'm going to relive that same experience, and I'm not going to change my legacy. And for me, it was always about changing my legacy. And that was why I decided to go to military, because I knew I will have another chance
at a new life.
to start, yes.
Start over.
What was life like in the military? How long did you serve for?
Yeah, well, I was almost 8 years officially in that unit. Afterwards, I spent another quite long time in it was more like a mercenary kind of thing. And yeah, military, what was it like? I mean, I can tell you right now what it was like. I was with the Parabets. The Parabets were even more German than the town where I grew up. The funny thing was, when I came, I had like a black trousers on, I had a blue shirt on, a tie, and a black leather jacket. I actually looked like
Someone from Greece.
Someone from Greece, or someone that drove a train in Germany. You know, they looked the same way. And I walked around that corner into that long passage, and there was a long passage with light, and there was the rooms left and right, which was the sleeping rooms for the recruits, for the soldiers. And at the end of that thing was a guy standing, and he was typical Aryan race looking. He had his hair shaved here, like properly shaved. He had this flat here and a little curl here. He had blue eyes, the palest skin that you can ever get. And the guy looks at me walking down that passage, and then I think what happened in his head, he recognized that I was colored, and he looks at me and he starts screaming from all the back. And I can promise you, that dude, he was actually my instructor when I was a soldier. That dude, like when he screamed, the windows started shaking.
Yeah.
And that scream went through my body, and he screamed at me and he said the following words. He said, "You do fucking know where you are now." And obviously he was referring to like me, you know, colored child, colored boy, and now I'm here at the Parabets and everything. So they were very traditional, and that was the start of my career there, you know. And I did all the training, Parabet training. I did like a lot of very crazy things during my military time, and he became my instructor. And funny enough, with his whole kind of way of thinking, his old school thinking, and I mean, I was the only colored guy in that entire unit, the rest was Germans. After my 3 months basic training, I got my green, I don't know how you call it in English, but it's like the green things that go onto your flaps. They come right here. It's a green stripe, and that indicates that you're actually infantryist. And you get that from your instructor. So he puts it on there, slides it, he claps you on the shoulder, and then you are infantryist. And when he did that, he looked at me and he said to me, "I'm proud of you. I'm really proud of you." And I don't think, maybe I should repeat it. So he said to me, "You are a 0.5, and he was referring to half of my color, but no one in this unit can show you anything, and I'm proud of you." That's what he said to me. And that was for me, you know, that was for me a moment where I again recognized that, you know, what we perceive of people, and that first picture when someone walks towards you, it's all preconditioned, you know.
Yes.
We had bad experiences. We had bad experiences with this. We hear the news where they're all still telling us about tradition in Germany and all these foreigners coming and all these coloreds and blacks, they are coming and they're taking our jobs away. So you have a preconceived kind of perception of the world. And I think when he saw me walking down that passage, it was for him like, you see, now they're even taking away the military from us, you know, now they're even infiltrating our traditional troops and everything. Maybe that was his way of thinking. I can never confirm that because I don't know what was happening in his head. But I think after experiencing the person, and that is exactly what we don't do and what we don't take time for, to experience the people rather than to have this expectation or this preconceived picture of a person just based on emotions and experiences. You know, we don't take time to experience people and to understand who they are and then recognize maybe that they're actually much better than we thought they were, you know. And I think that was exactly what happened to him. And we created a huge bond that lasted throughout my entire training. Yeah.
That's great. So it was, it's funny because in your childhood you were trying to escape that.
Yes.
And then when you got to the military, you were forced into it.
Yeah, you're
100%.
stuck in that situation.
Yes.
So you had to deal with it and learn from it.
Learn from it, yes. And I mean, it was all, you know, there was parabets, it was traditional guys, you know, they were all, you know, they were all looking the same way like the soldier looked like in the Second World War. It was quite scary for me, you know, and I didn't know what I was in for, you know, but I came there and I was later transferred to the school where all the parabets were trained. You know, I was an instructor there as well. And then obviously I went on trainings all over the world. You know, I went to the Foreign Legion for training. I went to different units in the world and did different trainings. And obviously, you know, I don't want to dive too much into that, but I can tell you, military is a hard experience, you know. And there's a lot of times where you are brought to your edge and to your point where you actually want to switch off. And what you learn in military, very importantly, is to get over that edge. You know, we draw this line in front of us, and when you get to that line, you think you can't anymore. But you know, experiments that were done with Navy SEALs, they show clearly when a normal human being actually thinks that's it, I can't anymore. That's when you're actually only at 40% of what you can do. You know, by the time you reach 100%, you're still not good enough to be a soldier in a special unit, you know. And I mean, I served in a special unit, and that's why I can tell that. What you learn there is to go this 50, 60, 70% above the 100 that you actually go, and that's already 60% above what the normal person out there will already throw the towel and will say, that's it, I can't anymore. I'm going to go into an asylum or whatever. I'm going to go to a psychiatrist or something like that, you know. And I think that's a very important thing that I learned in military, resilience. And I also think...
Stealing my questions, eh?
Yeah, resilience, discipline, to push yourself harder and to accept that there's always change. I think one thing that came out of my childhood that was very important for me is to accept change, you know, to accept change and knowing that nothing will ever be the same. I think that's the most important thing that I learned when I was a child, because we moved consistently, dropping in and out of school. Boyfriend 1, boyfriend 2, boyfriend 3, and hitting and beating and all those things. So never any day was the same. And I think the most important thing that I learned from it was that I accepted the fact that nothing ever stays the same, you know, and that is a very, very important thing. And, you know, today, in these days, in life, what happens very often is you take this normal person, they go to a job, they wake up 8 o'clock in the morning, they stop 5 o'clock. They're going to be a clerk, they're going to be a supervisor, they're going to be a manager, then they maybe become an executive if they're lucky. But what you see is when you take these people and all of a sudden they receive a retrenchment letter, their whole world crumbles. Everything falls apart. And it drives them to points where they want to commit suicide, where they maybe, out of frustration, now have a fight with their wife, they hit their wife, you know, murders have happened because of circumstances like that.
Whereas it should go the other way. That should be your biggest blessing.
100%, I agree 100%. But it shows you, you know, that we people are so in our pathway, and we're so thrilled by the community around us. You know, you have to go work, you have to work 8 to 5, you have to buy a house, you have to buy a car, you have to plant a tree, you have to have a wife and 2 kids. And when anything happens around us that shakes this way up, then we're all out of line. And I think that when I was a child, because I had this inconsistency all the time, there was always change, nothing ever stayed the same, and you kind of prepared for the fact that today I have food, but tomorrow I won't have food anymore. Today I'm happy, tomorrow I'm going to get the best hiding of my life again, you know. Today we got a boyfriend that is actually quite nice. Next week we're going to have one that is going to beat us up and beat our mom up, you know. And I think the lesson that I've learned, and that connected to military as well, because in military the thing that you train and the thing that you have to be prepared for is that there will always be change. However well you train, however well you are prepared for the situation, there will be change.
Well, if I'm right, you get trained to fail, don't you?
100%.
Yeah, I mean,
yes.
they train you to, it doesn't,
Yes.
if you reach the top, then that's not actually the top,
Yes.
ever.
100%.
You just keep
Yeah.
growing.
And the most important thing is that you train to adapt. Adapting is for a soldier number one lesson, you know, adapting to the circumstances, changing circumstances, and whether you have achieved what you planned, it doesn't matter. If the circumstances change and your situation changes, you adapt, you make a plan, and you follow through. And I think that is what a lot of people are missing. You can see that in the business industry as well. You know what I've recognized in South Africa very often in terms of service delivery is people always stop before the finishing line. You know, if the finishing line is 100%, a company puts all their effort in and they go, and at 95%, you know, they start crumbling and they still make another 1.5% or 2%, but somewhere just shortly before the finishing line, they stop because they don't follow through. And that is where I always say that is something that I've learned, to follow through. It doesn't matter. The finishing line is not good enough, because when you are at the finishing line, that means you have accomplished your mission. But that doesn't mean that you've extracted yet. That doesn't mean that you're back in your base yet. That doesn't mean you're back at home with your wife. There is still a long way to go, and there's still many things that can happen before you're in the safety zone.
Yeah, that's a great to take away.
That is
great to take away. And then on the note of change, I mean, these are great lessons you're learning, but from what it sounds like, many people end their career in the military at some point. You know, you learn your lessons and you move.
Yes.
What was your break point, or why did you decide, okay, I'm done with the military, now it's time for me to continue my life?
You know, it was just, there was a lot of things happening, and there was a lot of things that also happened in my life. And I just came to a point where I thought, you know, I've been a child that came into a world where I had nothing. I had no preconditioning there was no father, no mother that taught me anything, that gave me all the tools that other kids have to start with, you know. I came to military without tools, but I picked up the tools, you know. And yes, there was role models and there was people that trained me. But I think that also I've grabbed every opportunity to take in knowledge and to learn things. And eventually, after that long time, I recognized that I love challenges. I love to learn new things. But with military, it was like, now there is not going to be any change anymore. You might go to another place, you might go to another base, you can ask for being transferred somewhere. But the real challenges of life, which I saw when I left the base and I came home and I saw people, now they're facing this, now the other guy is going overseas and all that stuff. I actually then recognized that I think there is more out there for me. I was hungry for knowledge, I was hungry for adventure. And I just reached that pinnacle where I said, maybe there's something else out there for me, you know. And and then I left, and I opened myself up for another challenge.
We could say in the military, you were successful in the military.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had a normal career. I have done trainings in many places that I really appreciated and that really were fantastic. You know, like going to the Foreign Legion, for instance, those kind of things. You meet people that are on a completely different scale, you know, a completely different level of, you can't even describe that with words, you have to see that, you know, so obviously, and what I have to say is that military has treated me well. Although I arrived there and I thought, this is it, you're going to get eaten up in this place, you know, because you are half black, you are colored, you know, you're going to go down. But I must say that my entire military career was actually a path with people that really cared about me, that really, they saw me as a brother, they saw me as a colleague, they treated me well. I did my driver license in military, all my driver licenses, from car to truck, everything that I couldn't do before. I bought many things that I couldn't have when I was working, not making money. I did educational training, you know. I did my matric, everything. I did all my qualifications in school. I did in military. Everything that I didn't have and that I missed out on when I was young, I got that from military. So the takeaway that I had from the German army was absolutely unbelievable. And it's really a point where you have to say, It is fantastic. That is the thing about a first world country that I have to praise. You would have never, in many places in the world, where I finished off after school, from there would be nothing anymore.
Yes. There
would be nothing then chaos, destruction, failure, and most probably maybe a criminal career or something like that. There would have been no way for me anymore. And I had a great chance in military, and I used that opportunity. That was the most important thing. I used that opportunity.
You grabbed it.
Yeah, you've used it all the way till now even.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Just keep using it over and over.
It's quite cool because, like we said, your first choice to get out of that position, you were stuck, and now you weren't really stuck.
Yes.
You were at the peak of your game, but you realized that you're not gonna. There's no real way to get more out of it for yourself.
Yes.
So you move out of military and then security.
Yeah, well, before that, I worked for about a year for IT company because before military and during military, I always loved computers. And what I've done, so I studied IT, and I did it all in distance learning. And I had computers everywhere at my house. When I came home from military, I used to sit and I used to hack and I used to write code and stuff like that. So my entire career, even after military, IT was always something that moved with me.
A bit part of it, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why today, you know, I do, when I need a web page, I do it myself. When I need flyers, I do it myself. My marketing, if a computer breaks, I fix it. You know, I have a long track record of IT and IT security. So I worked for a company, for a computer company close to where I was based. I left, and I was back in the days with my wife, and we lived in a house, and I worked for that IT company. And it was roughly for a year. But there we came back to where I started. The town where I lived, where the base was, where I was, my final base where I was stationed before I was actually left military, was again a small little town. And it was all opinions, it was small, everyone talking about everyone. It was a small little shitty town, to be quite honest, you know. And it was just a place where you're going to die, you know. It's the place where you actually move to when you are 80 and you have $1 million left on your account. You go there so that you can die in peace. That's the end, that's where it stops. And what happened is actually, I worked for that IT company and then left there because it wasn't the right thing for me. It didn't fulfill me, that particular company. IT, yes, 100%, and I wasn't ready to die. And back in the days, it was again one of those places where people looked at me and they said, yeah, but what are you going to do? Are you now going to, you know? And I looked at them and I said, you know what, I'm going to become a bodyguard. That's what I said before I was a soldier. I want to be a soldier, I want to be a bodyguard, and I'm going to protect the most important people in the world. And I said, I'm going to become a bodyguard. And in that town, everyone was looking at me. And it was again that situation like in military where I walked down that passage and he looked at me and he said, do you actually know where you are now? It was there again. Everyone is looking at me and saying, what, now you want to become a bodyguard? Are you actually mad? You know, I mean, you got a wife, you come from military, you got your IT job. Why you want to throw this all away now again? And I said, you know what, stuff you. I'm not going to die in this little shitty town here.
Do you think this was young man ambition? Trying to stick it to everyone.
Yeah, I think so. I think so, yeah. You know what, it was just about the fact that I didn't believe that was it. Yeah. And I just saw bigger things. So what I did, I enrolled for a close protection program at the Czech border from Germany to Czech. And it was a 6-month course. And it was all about bodyguarding, about close protection and everything, security, infiltration in terms of security, you know, intelligence, counterintelligence. And what happened is after about, I think 4 weeks, I was in that school, and what happened is there was a company in Munich with and the owner, just to put that on record, was a colored boy. Like obviously he was a man by that time, and he used to be in the German Special Police Unit GSG-9, and he was involved in a couple of things that happened in terms of the RAF in Germany, the terrorist time. And he was a policeman for very long, and then he formed a company, a very high-profile security company in Munich. And what happened is he used to come to that school, and he would come into the classroom, and he would have a talk to the people about the industry they are planning to endeavor in, about the pros and the cons and everything. And he would come there to find talent. And a man walked in there, and what happened is he looked at me. And there was this connection, because he was that colored boy, and he came from the same kind of thing. It was me, just much older. It was actually like it would have been my dad that I never had. And he looked at me, and he saw himself in me. And what happened is, he spoke to the owner of the school, and he told him, I want to have this boy. I don't know what it is, but I see something in this boy, and I want to have this boy. So what actually happened is, he took my paperwork, and back in the days was just a time where Michael Schumacher needed a new bodyguard on the team for the family protection and for the kids protection. So he looked at me, and he took my paperwork, and he sent it off, and because just to roll that back, that you understand the background, that company that I worked for there, or where I then ended up at, is a company that protected Michael Schumacher from the get-go when he was famous. Also Boris Becker, and the second in charge of that company was actually the bodyguard that died in the tsunami in Thailand with his two sons. And there was movies about that and stuff like that. And he was the long-year bodyguard and the head of the close protection team of Michael Schumacher. And he was actually also a very close friend of mine, but I come back to that just now. Yeah. So he arrived there, looked at me, had a chat with me, and said, I see something in you. And he decided to give it a go. So he sent my paperwork off to the family to approve me. And they came back, and they actually said, you know what, I'm sure that he's a great guy, but he just looks too hard for our kids, you know. And let me tell you, I came out of military, I had my head shaved. I also had that flat now on my head with that curl, you know, role models. 100%. I was bigger. I was about 15 kilos heavier. But like in terms of muscle, you know, I was like still super heavyweight fighter, and I was huge. And I had this thing. I used to paint my eyebrows for whatever reason. Don't even ask me. It's actually ridiculous. I looked like a flippin' idiot. And so they decided to say, no, that's not, I don't know, he might be a nice guy, but I don't think that this is the right thing for us. So that didn't materialize. But funny enough, there was another close protection team for a very big corporate in Germany, one of the most well-known corporates in Germany, that at that time needed a bodyguard because they had one that left the team. So I went, so he actually told me, you're going to come. So I stopped the course. I went to Munich. He gave me a small little apartment in a house where he had all the students. And it was just a mattress on the floor. That was all that I had there. And I mean, I had nothing in where I went to. I came from that town. It was also shortly after my divorce, you know, when I left military with my first wife. So I was quite broke, you know, divorce, everything moving. And I came there and I had nothing, you know. And
I heard something really cool now. Like you used the word broke, which was nice.
Yes.
Bedros Klinen, I watched a little stint of him today, and he said there's two different mindsets.
Yes.
There's a broke mindset and there's a poor mindset.
Yes.
If you're broke, you're going to make money.
100%.
If you're poor, you're in a poor mindset.
100%.
So you used the word broke, which was really nice. So it shows you, like, you understand you got no money, but it's not the end.
That's not the end, yes. Yeah, so I ended up sleeping in that room with one mattress, and what happened is they brought me to the first interview round for that big corporate, and that was the sports test. And the sports test was very similar to our military test, you know, that we had to do every couple of weeks and months to stay within our units. So obviously I flew through that test like, you know, the guys were looking at me, you know, and then there was the second round where it was about the interview. So there was the board sitting there and the head of security. And then we were sitting there, and let me tell you, me with my painted eyebrows, I had a cheap suit on because I couldn't afford anything proper. I was sitting on that thing. I looked like an idiot, to be quite honest. And there was next to me was sitting all those other guys that were applying for the position. And that was the typical mommy boy. The hair was perfect. Everything was licked and gelled. The suit was a handmade suit. Everything fitted nicely with cufflinks, with a tie that you could already see the money screaming out of that suit, you know, and they looked like their faces were perfect, you know, eyebrows, hair, everything was just perfect. And there was a couple of questions that were asked, and I can't reveal those questions, but they asked a couple of questions. Why do you want to do that? Why do you think that you are the right person for us? And why do you think that you are better than these guys sitting around you? And I answered those questions, and, you know, I was still quite rough, you know. I still had that whole military about me. I was a rough guy, no filter. Language was, like, very rough.
Oh, and when you're rough, I suppose you hadn't had experienced in refined circles
100%,
yet. You know?
100%.
So you're not defined by where you come from, but you are that at that time.
100%. I was as real as you can get it, you know. I just said what I thought. And yeah,
as if you don't do that now.
100%. That's true. Yeah.
Nothing's changed.
Yeah, nothing has changed basically.
School to military.
Yes. 100%. Yes.
And his job, The color on the eyebrows.
100%, yeah. So we walked out of that room, and you know, when I saw those guys, I think that was where I had a poor mindset, because I walked out of that room and I said, that's not going to happen, you know. And yeah, a day later they called me and they said I had the position. So I entered that close protection team, driving around with S6, you know, Audi S6 in Munich, carrying a gun. And I was already now there where I was and where I wanted to be. And the funniest thing was that in that town that I lived, there was a guy that actually, he was always laughing about me, because I was always that security, but more bouncer kind of things that I've done. And he always laughed about me. And he was also one of those that always thought, you anyway, never going to make it somewhere. Funny enough, when we had the board meeting of that big company, all the bodyguards would be sitting on the same row as the executives of that big corporate would be. And there would be TV and everything. And there would be a security company that would outside actually protect the entrances and make sure that they search the backpacks. And funny enough, guess who was with those guys that were just outside searching bags and looking that everything goes right outside on the fences. That was that guy that looked at me. And I walked past him with the director of that company. I walked past him with the other bodyguards, knob in my ear, gun on my hip, walked past him, and I just looked at him and I went like this. And I walked in, and you should have seen his face.
Yeah,
it went pale.
Different mindsets. Different mindsets. I think we, the talk that we were at the other night with Suits and Sneakers,
Yes.
that's what was spoken about as well. That he had that mindset of, he can't make it, or blaming other people for whatever's going on in his place.
Yes.
So, and you were just like, I'm going to attack it and go head on.
Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, I ended up in the team and worked there. Andrew, just do me a favor quickly. Just tell the guys to be a bit quiet because we're recording that podcast here. Is that fine?
Which guys?
The guys in the table tennis room, please, because we can't walk away. Thanks, man. So funny enough, I ended up in the team, and but a couple of months later, there was a big story with internal affairs and stuff like that. And because I was the first to come, I had to leave. And because I was on contract, I was subcontracted to the company. They had their own bodyguards, and they had a couple of bodyguards from our company which were subcontracted. And I had to leave, and that was where it ended. And then I used to drive escorts behind trucks all through Europe, all the way up to Norway, to you know, everywhere. We transported money in trucks, and we drove behind the trucks armed in undercover vehicles. And he said to me, you know, I got nothing else for you, so you have to do that for now, you know, and we find something for you. And I did that for quite a while. And what happened is that we then had that incident where our second in charge died in that tsunami in Thailand. And obviously we had the second in charge in the company missing. And there was a lady, and the owner of the company already had a couple of fallouts with that lady, and she was doing a couple of things that he didn't really like. And there was the one evening where he called me in, and we had a discussion with her, and on that spot he fired her. And he looked at me and he said, that's your chance. The guy that died is not here anymore, you are not here anymore, that's your chance. And that was when I became became the authorized signature of our company, which is almost like the second in charge of the organization. And funny enough, then came incidents where Michael needed some people to bring him to other places, and he wanted someone, and I obviously had a bit of a facelift. You know, I started not painting my eyebrows again. I wore suits that looked nicely, and I grew some hair, you know, and had a nice haircut, and ended up then becoming working for Michael, and started working with the family, looking after the kids, looking after his properties. And that's how I moved on, you know. And then there was a lot of other stuff that I've done, flying money to countries. That's my first contact with Africa, as I used to transport money through Africa, but like charter machines full of money.
Before we go on there,
yes.
I remember you and I spoke a little bit on the phone, and you definitely spoke about people in your life influencing specific things, you know. And being a bodyguard, being around those highly influential people, like Michael Schumacher. We can't just carry on talking after Michael Schumacher. Come on. Like, what was it like being around him? He's probably the greatest motorsport driver in history.
Yes.
Arguably, obviously.
100%.
But did you take anything from him? What was his discipline like?
Yes.
What kind of influence was it being around him in those circles? You know?
Yeah, I think that was actually one of the most important things that I took away from him. You know, he was not only a great sportsman, he was a fantastic family father. He was a great friend to the people around him. You know, and he was a very, very disciplined person. And you could see that in his routines, the way he trained, the way that he carried himself, the way that he dealt with people around him, the way that he dealt with us as his close protection team. You know, when there was conflict, when there was problems to solve. He was just a human being on a completely different level. And I think he was one of the people that are always, I think envy is the wrong word, but I admired him for his strength, you know, for his discipline, for all the things that he had achieved in his life. And that is some of those humans that you meet along your ride through life that really have a huge impact on you, because it's just looking at them and looking what they have done, you know, in a small life period, you know, and what they have achieved and accomplished in life, and what empires they sometimes built completely on their own. And funny enough, not always based on a formal education or studies or whatever, sometimes based on a small little thing, which is called passion, because he had a passion to race, he had a passion to drive. And that's what got him where he was, you know, and made him the person that he is, you know. And despite of his conditions now, you know, he will always, for me personally, he will always remain that person, you know. He will always be that icon that I've met. And yeah, definitely, I've learned many things from that man just by looking at his life and by how he's conducting himself.
Yes. Any other influential people you would say that you learned big lessons from in that time?
Yeah, I've protected a couple of high-profile people, and without going into many details and revealing names and stuff like that, but one thing that you learn about all these people is that they are all highly driven. And you know, whether they're always driven for the right reasons, or whether they always come from a poor or from a rich background, that doesn't matter. But what you will see is that these people all carry a couple of traits about themselves that you will find in all successful people. And it is passion, it is discipline, it is resilience, it is going like past that finishing line, pushing through and going all the way in through the end. And you know, whether they have money or not, it's not always what defines those people. What I've learned a lot about influential people is that it is really a specific mindset. You know, it's not because they've been born into a rich family. Some of them I met, maybe they have been a bit more fortunate and grew up in a rich family or had rich families. But one thing I can say about most of them was that the character and the mindset that they had was something that they've developed themselves.
Yes.
You know, and that is a very important thing, and that's what I've took away from those people. And what you always will see is that they don't make excuses. They don't. You know, they always retaliate. They don't make excuses. They push forward and they go the extra mile. And that is something that you will always see in successful people. And there's a passion.
Okay.
It's obviously failure after failure after failure until you push through all those failures just to break through into that.
Yes. Many of those people have failed, have crashed businesses, have liquidated businesses and started all over again. And that's what it is. It's the same like when you race, you know, when you're a Formula 1 car driver. You will win a race and one time you will stand on that podium, and then the next time you will end up on 23, you know. But it's the same thing like in life, you know, like in childhood or youth. When you grow up, sometimes you are number 1 and sometimes you're on 23 or even 50 or whatever, you know. But the question is, are you willing and are you prepared to come back in the next race?
So that leads me to my question, which is, do you have a favorite failure that you've been through in your life, and or a failure that's led you to the success that you've got now?
Yes, I think when I arrived in South Africa, I was still quite a rough kind of guy in terms of the way I conducted myself. I was always a social butterfly, and I never had a problem having friendships or something like that. You know, that sounds very funny. Eh?
Oh, Dan, I can't.
You see me as a butterfly.
I can't. But I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
So yeah, and I think that is one point, you know. But when I arrived in South Africa, I was quite a roughie, and I think especially like going to relationships, and you said we're going to talk about love. I had my way. And my way was my way, and the rest was the highway. And I think I carried that very very hardly into my relationships, you know, before South Africa and when I arrived in South Africa, like the first 1 or 2 years, my relationships were up and down. I was riddled, and you know, it was in and out. It was girlfriend, wife, divorce, girlfriend, you know, and stuff like that. And I think it was purely due to the fact that I grew up in an elite environment, you know, as a soldier, as a bodyguard. It's kind of an elite environment. And I was always trained to react or respond to everything with maximum force. So when you got that tipping point in a discussion or an argument with your partner, or sometimes even with friends, you would tend to get to that point where you respond with maximum force. And the maximum force, you know, for a soldier, that's destruction. That means I'm going to crush you. That means I will never step back. I will go forward until I reached what I want to, you know.
Yeah, it doesn't work so well in society.
It doesn't work so well in society. And sometimes, you know, hitting the head through the brick wall is not always the smartest move to make. So I think after I got divorced from my second wife, it was quite a rough marriage. And I think I've made many mistakes there. And the woman really ended up in a bad position in terms of, you know, that was not all my fault. We were both not good for each other, but there was a lot of things that she also carried, you know. But what I learned when we broke up, it was hard for me. It was a very, very hard divorce, and I was really emotionally at a point where I've never had seen myself in my life before, in terms of, you know, emotions towards other human being. And I think the turning point came when I had that divorce, where I really, you know, I downloaded ebooks, I've looked at things, you know, I did checklists to find out, are you a narcissist? Do you have tendencies of a psychopath? All those kind of things, you know. And you know what, I think a lot of people will never drop their guard and pull their pants and say that, you know, you looked in the mirror and you said, are you actually a narcissist, or do you have psychopathic tendencies or something like that,
No,
you know?
You're definitely not alone in this experience.
100%.
There are other people out there that have been to
Yes, but most of them don't talk about it, you know.
How do they move forward
100%.
with it?
But I looked at it, you know, and I think after my own assessment, I thought, okay, well, you know, you surely got a bit of a screw loose. That's because of your background. And you surely have a couple of issues in terms of social environments, in terms of, you know, communicating properly, accepting opinions and stuff like that. And the turning point was for me where I started looking at myself and I said to myself, you know, it doesn't matter how someone treats you. It doesn't matter if your wife, your husband calls you names back forward, throws things at you, even tries to be physical with you or whatever. That all doesn't matter. The only choice that you have in life is how you respond to it. And when that all happened, I took an oath to myself and I said, I cannot control how people treat me, but I can certainly control how I respond to it. And all that happened from there was a transformation where I started to find my triggers. That, you know, when you got this thing coming up in your chest when you get angry, and then you can't breathe, and then comes this flame out of your mouth. And I mean, that flame from my side used to be very destructive, you know, and ended up in screaming matches, in very disrespectful kind of communications, you know, both ways. But still, you know, you look at yourself and you say, why are you like that? Do you really want to be that kind of person? And I decided that I want to catch that trigger right here when the thing is here in the chest. I want to catch that trigger. And I want to be able to now just disconnect from that thing here for 1 second and take a deep breath. Think and then respond to it. And there was a year, 2 of transformation and of practice and of things that I've done. And eventually I really came to a point where my entire attitude about life and about relationships, about friends and everything, about my attitude changed. And I looked at myself and I started actually liking myself more in terms of social situations, in terms of how I was with girlfriends, or in situations where I was challenged, where, you know, where the articulation stopped and where you would usually now pull the gun and shoot, you know. And
Figuratively.
Absolutely, figuratively. Yeah, we're not shooting really, literally. But, you know, the point was that it made a big change in me. And for my friends, my close friends, you know, that I have, that used to go with me through that marriage and everything, and through all the things and their own problems that they had, you know, as you say, there's many of us out there. I made a transformation that was visible to people. And I think the biggest challenge in life is it's very easy to have a first impression about someone, or when people have a first impression about you. But to change that perception about you is one of the hardest exercises in life, because it doesn't help to just change for 3 months. Or you need to adapt and adopt a new lifestyle.
And it's not easy.
And it's not easy. It's a challenge.
Daily work.
It's something that you have to do every day, you know. And it was sticky notes on the fridge, sticky notes in the bedroom, notes here, notes there. And there comes the relapse where you go back to your behaviors. But I think that that is something that changed my life and changed who I was. And the photography part, which we're surely going to talk about just now,
100%.
that made also a big contribution to the person that I am now, after I've been living in South Africa for almost 8 years. And where today I find that you could give me any kind of partner. It doesn't matter. It would be a good relationship. Whether you are compatible or it would work, that doesn't always matter. But I know that I can have a relationship with any kind of human being that has decency, that has respect, and that is willing to give me back what I give them. And certainly what I've achieved throughout that transformation is the fact that I now know that I can respond the way that I want to. I don't respond anymore by my guts or by my impulse or by my training and my force that I have inside of me. I respect with emotional intelligence. And I think that is something that men, especially, particularly, learn only in later stages of their life, you know, to grow.
And through trauma.
100%.
You have to go through that trauma.
Yes. And I think your intelligence is completely irrelevant if you do not own emotional intelligence. And that is where we men very often fail. Men are strong, they can protect their family, they can provide if they need to, they can fight, they can do so many things. But I think that men in general very often lack emotional intelligence.
Yeah, 100%. Normally we keep this to an hour, but I'm enjoying myself. I think we'll just carry on going.
I think I'm also enjoying myself.
Yeah.
I have one piece there just to add to that.
Yes.
You said it's daily work, so daily rituals. Do you have any daily rituals that you still work on to keep you moving through all of that?
I think my daily ritual is, my entire life pattern has changed in the day I picked up a camera, you know, and I think that made a big difference in my life to the photography.
So can you, to reiterate on Matthew's, can you lead us through why photography?
Yes.
And then how your routine works with photography?
Yes. So, well, I mean, I went to a game farm with a friend, and he used to be a contractor, and you know, every now and then he would go with us to a game farm just to say thank you. And what happened is that he used to be a wildlife photographer, and we arrived there and we took pictures. I was there back there with my second wife, and I had a little camera that I bought before. It was just like a small little thing for 2,500 rand or 3,000 rand. Yes.
Do we need more light, or is that light?
I can put light on. 1 second. Is that coming on? Oh wait, there was definitely a light here. I don't even know where it is.
We're okay.
Oh, there's no bulb. Okay, are we still okay? Okay, cool. So what happened is that we went there, and it was actually a pure testosterone thing that I ended up in photography, because I was there with that camera, and he was there with this big camera and that big lens, and he took pictures, and I looked at him and I thought, why does he have that big camera and I have this little piece of shit? So we came to the hotel room, we looked at the pictures, and he showed me the picture and he zoomed in. You could almost look through the mouth of the hippo. You could look all the way down to its pupil. That's how clear that camera was, you know. And then I looked at my camera at the back and I zoomed in, and as more as it zoomed in, the worse the picture got. And it actually looks like there were rocks in the water. And I thought to myself, what the hell is going on here, you know? And we left and we came back, and the next time I bought a bit of a bigger camera, and I bought a 7300 zoom lens. And we went again, and now you actually could start seeing detail, but it was still nowhere next to what he had on his camera. And then, as I am, the German, impulsive, you know, we came back, I went and I bought a D600 immediately, and flashes and everything, and I had that stuff in my house, and I looked at the stuff and I thought to myself, what are you actually going to do with this? What are you actually going to do? You got flashes, you got no idea about photography.
Push it on auto and you put the flashes on, and you look at those pictures with white backgrounds on Google, and then you go and you put those flashes on, you take pictures, and it does not look even remotely like that. It's blue, it's yellow, because your white balance is not right. So yeah, there I had those flashes, and I thought to myself, you know, do something with it. So I put up a backdrop in the garage, and I actually started taking pictures of my second wife's kids, you know, a boy and a girl. And I started shooting. And I went to a local school
a photography school, and I started asking questions, and they were always, again, back to that point where I walked down that passage in military.
Like, oh, where's
Well,
this
oh
guy?
my God, look at this, look at this Hulk there with a big arm.
Except now the guy's holding a flat white cappuccino and
100%,
brogues.
100%, yeah. So they were looking at me, and you could always see kind of
Photographers do not fit this profile.
100%, yes.
Definitely don't fit this well.
But you could see there was this kind of belittling attitude again, like this guy in that little town that laughed when I said I'm going to become a bodyguard. And I still came and I asked questions, but I actually recognized that they didn't really want to help me, you know. So I went back, and I can tell you, as a risk manager, I used to work 14, 16 hours, do crazy things, you know. And I took that away from my sleep. I used to sleep 4 hours a night, 3 hours a night, and I would study on YouTube. I would take my camera, go out in the middle of the night whilst the wife was sleeping into the garage, putting like a little teddy bear on a chair and testing, and it doesn't work, and back, and YouTube, why are you getting this picture and I'm not getting this picture? And it went on and it went on. And then there was a time where I came to Cuba, and there was a band playing named Saving Silence, you know, and these guys actually got me full in because they were there, and I just came and I snapped pictures. And then I asked the guys, would you mind if I put flashes up when you play? So I put flashes up, and I started snapping away, and I took pictures. And then there was that one day where there was Brent Harris and the Jam, they played there, but I came late, and he was just finishing his drum solo, and he's quite a well-known musician in Johannesburg, you know. He was playing this drum solo, and I just grabbed a quick snapshot. And I took that picture, and I put it on Facebook, and I tagged him. And then he called me, and he took that picture, made it his profile picture, and then he called me and asked me if I can do a band shoot for them at Catsy's.
So cool.
And I was still at a point where I had not much experience, you know. I knew how to use flashes now, but yeah, and I knew how to use flashes, but it wasn't that solid, you know. And I said, yes, of course, no problem, I do it, you know. That's how we go with Germans, you know, full force.
Richard Branson says, take every opportunity and figure it out.
100%. So I went and I took that shot, and I did that shoot, and it was actually really amazing pictures. I don't know how it came out like that, but it was amazing pictures. And then through the process, I got to meet Denham Harding, which is the producer of Prime Circle. You know, he produces Johnny Clegg and everyone. And I met a technician that did the sound for them. And I say to him, and that was maybe 6 months into photography, I say to him, one day I will photograph Prime Circle. And as it happened, you know, they were all connected with each other because Denham Harding did their albums, and then now and then Ross and someone from Prime Circle would come to News Cafe where I would photograph Brent Harris for free every Sunday. I would just go there and take pictures and get them everywhere. And we arrived there, and there was Ross, and I spoke to him and I said, hey, I like your music, and you know, one day maybe if you really don't mind, you know, maybe we could do some pictures together. And at that time, I still thought it's not going to happen. And then maybe 8 or 9 months into photography, I get that call from Mariska, which is the manager of Prime Circle. And she asked me if I can do a band shoot for them. And looking back now, I mean, that got me into band and stage photography, where I'm quite successful and well known in South Africa. And after only 8 or almost 9 months into photography, I photographed Prime Circle, and ever since I do all their work, all their webpage images and everything. Most of the stuff that they use is images that I've taken from them, you know. So yeah.
So cool. You said once, or not you said once, or yes, you did kind of say once, but I'll lead into it, is that people are so scared to take that first step, you know, especially in photography. I know so many people that want to be photographers,
yes,
but they are so scared. And I know you are not like a half in, half out.
Yes.
I know you full in with everything. And I noticed that especially when every social event that we used to go to, if you were there, you had your camera and you were taking photos of everything. Everywhere.
On the backpack, kitted out, everywhere, every time.
There's even a photo of myself and Chanel. We were lying down and you had left your camera in the car at on Dina's place. And we're lying down there, you're like, oh, run to the car, run back, taking the photo. You know?
Still have that picture, yeah.
Yeah, amazing picture.
Yes.
And I think that's maybe something that so many people lack, is that obviously the belief in themselves, the fear, and the jumping in. So we must definitely get back to those habits in a few seconds. But what could you say to people that's like, how do they get over that? Why are people so stuck in it? How do they make that next step, you know?
It's again, I think it's the fact that we get stuck in that routine. We get stuck into that, you know, I always say the most important thing that I would like to give to people is embrace impermanence. Embrace the fact that nothing ever stays the same. Humans always think everything stays the same because they're scared of change. They want stability. You know, when you're in a life where you get married, you get a car, you get a house, you plant that tree, and you are happy, and nothing happens to your family, and you manage to live like that for, let's say, 50 years, we as humans tend to believe that now we have achieved permanence. But that's a very foolish thought. You know, if you look at life as a marble, and you take a big, the Route 66, and a big, let's say, 3 kilometers downslope, and you put that marble into the middle of the road and you let it go. That marble will roll straight, and all the cracks in the street where it gets a bit of bumps, I would say that is the challenges that we face as humans when we travel through life. But how big is the chance that this marble will stay in the middle of the road for indefinitely and not hit the right side or the left side, bounce off something, you know? Where I say that is almost what I compare, you know, that is the tragedies that we have in life when that thing goes really hard off track, you know. But there is no, you know, you might have a stretch of a kilometer, and maybe if you're lucky, that marble rolls down that stretch and does not come to the left or the right. And I think that is when we have those humans, maybe 1 out of 100,000, that have a life for 40 years where no tragedy happens. They get their house, they get their car, they get their family, and everything is perfect. They're married for 40 years and everything went well. But that is not normal life. Normal life is not permanent. And that's why I always say, embrace impermanence, you know, understand that there will always be change, that there will always be things that are different, that will change around you in the circumstance. And I think that's a very, very important thing. And people get stuck in that dream of permanence, that they want to achieve that, and that is the thing that they need to do. And then they have their job, they're working there since 8 years, and now throw everything away. I'm not going to have a salary. I'm not going to have money. What am I going to do? What is my wife going to think about me? What is my friends going to think about me? Listen to this thing. When I left corporate and I made really, really good money, I was an expat and I was paid very, very well. I had a big house in Bedford View, 5-bedroom. I had a Ford Ranger worth $500,000 or maybe even more. I used to go eat out every single evening. I would spend 15,000, 20,000 rand on going to restaurants every month, you know. So I had a high life, you know, golf membership here, driving range. And I left that and I knew that this is not going to carry on like that. The car gave back to the company. Salary went away. I moved out of the house into a 2-bedroom flat because I said, you know, you don't know what's going to happen. You need to re-look what is going to happen. And I think that already that climb, because I bought myself a little Polo, you know, a Polo Vivo. And then, you know, that big guy from the Ford Ranger now with his gear into the little Polo Vivo. What are my friends going to think? You know, everyone's going to look at me and think I'm a failure. You know, that's the normal thought process of people. But because I've learned in life that nothing ever stays the same and to embrace impermanence, I've accepted that because I knew it was a sacrifice necessary to be able to jump into a new business and to take that plunge and to follow my dream. And, you know, it's now 1st of March, I'm moving back into a house. Business is going well. I think this year I'm going to buy a bit of a bigger car. I would never buy a Ford Ranger if it wouldn't be a company car, you know, because I would never spend so much money on a car. Cars are for me irrelevant, you know, they don't mean nothing for me. It's a method of transport, yes. So, but, you know,
I think that's more a German mindset than a South African. South Africans love the fancy cars.
I agree. So, you know, those sacrifices are made and now I'm moving back into a house and things are back on track. And that took 16, 17 months, you know, but, you know, that fear, what is my peers going to think about me? Am I going to make money? Am I going to be able to do this? We sit our entire life and dream of what we want to do. But to really do those things, sometimes you need balls. And you need to not care about what people say or think about you, whether you're going to be perceived as a failure, because now after all those years, how can you change your career? How can you work for that IT company, have a wife and everything? Now you want to go and become a bodyguard. Why do you want to leave military and you have everything that you need? You can retire with military with a pension. You want to go and work in IT. Why do you want to leave your risk management where you make all that money and you got a car, you got a house, you got everything that you need now to become a photographer and live in your studio? That's the things that we face as humans every single day. And they discourage us and they make us think too long. And 40 years later, we sit and we recognize that we actually been nothing else in our life than a manager in a company. We paid our bills. We worked from 8 to 5. Yeah. We had a house, we had a car, we had a wife. But we are unhappy.
I think what's so beautiful is that once you, like you say, once you accept that things are going to change, you can make the change before the change happens to you.
100%.
What if you're in that situation and now you've gone through life 40 years and all of a sudden you get retrenched.
Yes.
Now you have to force the change. Where you could have made that change
20
when you
years
were 20
prior.
years back. You could have made that change and been where you wanted to be.
100%.
But now you've just sat there gone day in, day out from 8 to 5.
Yes.
I think one of the important things about that is your character and it stays with that. So people will go through these challenges and their character ends up changing when they face adversity. So if you can accept that life is never going to be the same, but not and be able to not change your character, then you definitely have. And Daniel's, so I've been privileged, I've been friends probably now 5-6 years.
Yes.
And we actually worked together at his last corporate job, and we worked very closely together. So it was daily, literally have a coffee chat, this, that, and we get on with things. And then I actually stayed very closely in touch with him through his metamorphosis of leaving corporates and becoming a photographer because we have a common love. We both love cameras, we both shoot Nikon, so there was a lot of questions. Check this out, what do you think here? So we went through a lot of that, and there was not a single moment where his character changed. It's still the same dude that I met 6 years ago.
From the military
100%.
to the
doing life.
doing life
And we
as
chat
you go.
very regularly.
Yes.
And outside of his photography, he does a couple of sort of contracting things. So he's still got the knowledge of the risk and managing that stuff. So I'll often phone and say, hey, I have this challenge on the risk side, can you help? And he's always there to say, cool, I'll see you tomorrow. And he's there to kind of advise on that, which is really cool as well. So communities are powerful things.
Powerful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so let's do some quick fires and then we can get into what's next for you or what are you
Yes.
up to at the moment and then take it from there. So discipline, I mean, what are your daily disciplines?
Daily rituals.
Daily rituals, yeah.
Daily rituals, yeah, we missed that point completely. Yeah, for me, daily ritual is like the same. Like I don't sleep a lot. I get up in the morning, I go to gym, and I'm not always diligent on that. I take my whole pass, or if you want to, or rain check, if you want to call it like that, and then I decide I maybe go in the evening or if I trained hard. But my routine is really to wake up, be conscious about being awake, understand there's a new day, there's new opportunities, there's new challenges, and then go to gym, have a good workout because I need that for my balance. I also need that to get rid of my energy because I'm very energetic, and if I don't go to gym, I can become a bit bumpy, So I go to gym, I do that. Then I pack my stuff, I go to the office, although I could work from home, but I've decided to come to this beautiful place here in Pello, which is a co-working space. And I just think because it keeps you on the straight and narrow, because you need to have discipline and you need to have structure, you need to have routine, because otherwise you get into that artist kind of thinking, let's wait for the angels to bring us work and, let's see what happens today and everything is going to be nice and beautiful. It's just not how it works, I think it's very important for your own development when you work for yourself and you could work for home, that you still have a routine, that you still have office hours, that you still come to a place, even if you work at home, but that at least you got routines and you got office hours and stuff like that. And I work through my day and I do my things that I have to do. I plan my shoots, look at what I need to edit and retouch, I do all my stuff, I do my marketing on the side. And I have my full working day, and that day sometimes is long. I sometimes sit here in this space till 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, although I could go home at 8. Yeah. It's not about budget. I have a strong business, the business is going very well. But I'm German, for us it never stops, and I'm always in the zone and I'm always working. I'm always out there looking for events. Where can I go? Where can I get my name out there, take pictures of everything, plaster social media, tag the whole world, and just get your name out there, And I think that's my routines, really wake up, gym, eat properly, do my work, come home, recognize what I've done for the day, appreciate what I've done for the day, appreciate that I had another day where I had the opportunity to do what I love, and but also do what is necessary, because I think it's very stupid advice to tell people you have to do what you love, otherwise we would all be having sex and smoking drugs the whole day, And,
Nobody do anything.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's a couple of fortunate people that maybe make money like that for their entire life, but then you have to be a gangster, which I don't want to be. But I always say you have to do what you love, but you also have to do what is necessary, because otherwise you're not going to be able to do what you love, unless you are so rich that you can pay people to do what you don't love.
Necessary.
100%, yeah.
Then another quick fire. Podcasts or books? Are you listening to any? Do you read any?
Yeah, I listen to German podcasts. I look at videos on YouTube. Books, I'm more into military books, Andy McNabb, Signal Bravo to Zero, stuff like that. What I do read a lot is photography ebooks, fashion ebooks. I consistently stay with the trends, you know, look what is changing in the world, or also try to look what is everyone doing so that I can do the opposite of it, you know, and I can change it. So I'm very busy with ebooks, reading. I think I am someone that consistently reads and keeps on like trying to develop, you know, and trying to always stay on top of my game. And therefore you need to read, you know. It's the way of education. It's learning for adults, you know. We're not in school anymore. From now on, what you're going to be in 20 or 30 years, you can either be an old fart that has nothing to say and that talks about his 50-year-old military stories, you know, or you can be a person that is still on top of the world, has a accurate knowledge about history, about current, about what is maybe going to come in the future. I think it's very important that we stay on top of life, and that we keep on evolving as human beings, because otherwise you get stuck in that rut.
That's a great way to put it. I've never actually heard someone explain it like that, but yeah, that's really nice. Anything quick fire from you?
Future, photo, video, for you, technology, what do you think?
You know, it's always a hard thing to say, because I love photography and I'm very passionate about it, but photography videography has obviously put me into a new challenge, because, you know, you see those movie-graded videos and then you think, you know, I'm going to do that. You take your cameras because you think they cost 150,000 Rand. It's easy to do. You go out and you come back with a video that looks like, and you just think, yeah.
You're standing in that hallway again.
Yeah. Anyway, you're standing in that hallway again, and you know, and then you start looking, and I think it's a new challenge for me. The video game, the vlogging, recording videos, commercials. I mean, I've done many commercials. When I have the budget, I can make a proper video, but then I have people that work with me, that are contract and everything. But now it's for me. The future outlook for the next couple of months is growing my video presence, growing my vlogging, sending messages to people. You know, I want to really start breaking those long stories that I have to tell up into smaller chunks, and seeing what kind of message can I send to the people through a short story that talks about something challenging in my life, and how can I create something on a regular basis where people can take something away. Because for me, it's always about, I want people to understand that there's always a lesson to learn. However rough life gets, you know, however tough it gets around you, there's always a lesson to learn. And it doesn't matter how hard you get knocked down. And it's really a silly phrase that everyone says, but it is really just important how you get up and how you move forward.
Yeah. Would you say your vlog now is your way of, like we spoke about this earlier, with your photography was your vehicle and your passion that you're with now, and your vlog or videos, is this kind of your way of giving back to people?
Yeah, I would say that, you know.
And outlet for yourself?
Yeah, 100%, because the photography has changed me a lot, you know, because I can express my emotions, hurt, trauma that I had in relationships, in military, in my career, all over Africa. You know, I've seen horrible things, you know, in the different things that I've done. And I think the camera, first of all, gave me an outlet to let those emotions out. I think that's why I always capture those moments, and why looking at me, which is an untypical vessel for a photographer and an artist, you know. But, you know, when you look at my pictures, I think one thing that I like about my pictures is there's always a story in there. There's always an emotion captured in my images. And I think that's my outlet to cry and to let emotions out that I've experienced, to deal with the things that I've experienced in my life, and that sometimes maybe come up, you know, whether it's childhood, thinking, could things have gone better if you would have grown up in a rich family, all those kind of thoughts that you have during a day, you know. And the photography was one thing, and I think it gave me back a lot of freedom. It gave me a lot of humanity back, and humility, and a lot of different things that I value a lot, and that now I start connecting to people. You know, I became a much better human ever since I picked the camera up, and a lot of my close friends will testify on that. My person, me as a human being, has changed from the moment that I picked a camera up, and I think it changed a lot to the better. And now with my videos, I want to try to take all those stories, to take all those experiences, take all those mistakes that I've made, and make messages out of it, to tell people, hey, there's a tomorrow. However hard today looks, there's a tomorrow. There's a way forward. You know, you just have to believe. You have to be resilient, disciplined. You have to be focused, and there's always a tomorrow. Make the best of it.
Love it. Now, where can people get hold of you? How can they see your photos?
Well, my Facebook page is Daniel Craig Johnson, DCJ Art Studio, or when you type in DCJ Art Studio Digital Photography, you can find me. On Instagram, it's DCJ Art Studio in one word, and my webpage is www.dcj-art-studio.com. And yeah, on social media, it's very easy. Look for Daniel Craig Johnson, and you will always find something coming up from me, and that's the way you can connect to me. And yeah, and I hope that people connect, because I like to share things with people, and I like to send messages to people and also hear stories. We're all storytellers, but it's also nice to hear stories from other people. What was your experience? How did you get through life? What made you become the person that you are? That's always inspiring for me.
Love it.
Nice.
Dan, I think that's us closed. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, man.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy. It was really great. Thanks, Ruby.
Thanks, pal. We still live there, eh?
Yes.
Okay, guys. So that's us closing. Thank you so much to Dan. It was an amazing experience being here. We learned a lot. I'm feeling really good, in awe actually. So it was really, really nice for me. If you want to hear more videos, click subscribe. I think it's over there. What's over there? One of those two. Click subscribe to our page.
If you don't still subscribe.
If you don't still subscribe anyway, it's going to get better and better. And
something might resonate.
catch us on SoundCloud now as well. We've also got our channel live on SoundCloud. So see you next time. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Awesome.
Okay.
Let's just do a photo quickly. That's that easy, dude.